halls of Versailles, where whispers of power and privilege echoed through gilded walls, one woman's name has been etched into the annals of history. Marie Antoinette, the last Queen of France, whose life remains as captivating as it is controversial. Marie Antoinette is more than just a figure draped in luxury and scandal. She embodies a complex era of transition, revolution, and the ultimate fall of a monarchy. As the Queen Consort of Louis VI, her every action, from her extravagant lifestyle to her alleged indifference to the plight of the common people, has been dissected and debated by historians and enthusiasts alike. Yet, behind the powdered wigs and lavish gowns, there lies a story of a young woman thrust into the eye of a political storm, where every misstep was amplified by a nation on the brink of transformation. But why, centuries after her dramatic fall, does Marie Antoinette's life continue to fascinate us? What is it about her story that resonates with the world today? As we delve into the intricacies of her life, we'll uncover not just the history of a queen, but the enduring human themes of power, identity, and survival under scrutiny. Her life serves as a mirror, reflecting the complexities of societal expectations, the fragility of status, and the inescapable consequences of public perception. Welcome to the ASMR History Channel, where I breathe life into the past through the soothing art of storytelling. Whether you're a returning viewer or joining us for the first time, I'm delighted to have you here. Today, I invite you to journey with me back to the court of Versailles, to explore the enigmatic life of Marie Antoinette, a story that continues to whisper through the corridors of history. In the heart of Vienna, Austria, in the year 1755, the world welcomed a child destined for both glory and tragedy. Maria Antonia Josepha Johanna, better known to history as Marie Antoinette. Born into the illustrious Habsburg dynasty, her life began in the splendor of the Hofburg Palace, where the weight of her lineage was felt from the moment she drew her first breath. The Habsburg family, one of the most powerful and influential in Europe, had long shaped the continent's political landscape. As the youngest daughter of Empress Maria Theresa and Emperor Francis I, Marie Antoinette's future was intertwined with the ambitions of her family, whose reach extended far beyond the borders of Austria. The Habsburgs were not just rulers, they were the architects of alliances, using marriage as a tool to secure their dominance across Europe. For Marie Antoinette, her birthright was both a blessing and a burden, setting the stage for a life of privilege, shadowed by the expectations of a dynasty. From the earliest days of her childhood, Marie Antoinette was groomed for a life that would one day place her at the pinnacle of European royalty. Her education, though far from rigorous, was carefully curated to prepare her for her future role as queen. Unlike her brothers, who were trained in the art of governance and war, Marie Antoinette's lessons were centered on the refinement and grace expected of a queen consort. She was taught to dance, sing, and play musical instruments, mastering the delicate art of courtly manners that would charm the most discerning of nobles. Yet, beneath the veneer of these cultural pursuits lay the iron will of her mother, Empress Maria Theresa, whose influence was ever present in her daughter's upbringing. The Empress, a formidable ruler in her own right, understood the power of image and diplomacy. She instilled in Marie Antoinette the importance of duty, loyalty, and the necessity of maintaining the dignity of the Habsburg name. While her formal education may have been lacking in depth, the lessons of diplomacy, poise, and charm were deeply ingrained, shaping her into the young woman who would soon be thrust onto the world stage. At just 14 years old, Marie Antoinette's life took a decisive turn when she was betrothed to Louis Auguste, the future King of France. This union was far more than a mere marriage. It was a strategic alliance crafted by the hands of two powerful dynasties. The marriage was intended to solidify the bonds between Austria and France, two nations whose histories had often been marked by rivalry and conflict. For Marie Antoinette, the journey from Vienna to Versailles was a passage not only across geographical borders, but also into a world vastly different from her own. The French court, with its intricate rituals and unforgiving scrutiny, was a stark contrast to the relatively relaxed atmosphere of her childhood home. As she crossed the border into France, she was forced to leave behind her Austrian identity, embracing the foreign customs, language, and expectations of her new home. The cultural differences were profound, and they would come to define much of her early experience as Dauphine, and eventually as Queen. The young girl who had once played in the gardens of Schönbrunn Palace now found herself in a gilded cage, where every move was watched, every word dissected, and every misstep could have far-reaching consequences. The grandeur of Versailles, with its endless halls of mirrors, manicured gardens, and opulent rooms, would have been overwhelming to anyone, let alone a 14-year-old girl from Austria. When Marie Antoinette first arrived at this gilded palace, she was met with a whirlwind of rituals, expectations, and scrutiny. The initial impressions of her new home were a mix of awe and trepidation. The French court was infamous for its rigid customs and unspoken rules, a world where every gesture and word could be a statement of power or a misstep leading to scandal. Marie Antoinette, who had grown up in the relatively informal atmosphere of the Austrian court, found herself navigating a labyrinth of etiquette where even her wardrobe and hairstyle were subjects of national interest. Adapting to these customs was not merely about fitting in, it was a matter of survival in a court where intrigue and rivalry thrived just beneath the surface of the glittering facade. As the Dauphine of France, Marie Antoinette was thrust into a role that demanded both grace and political acumen. Yet, behind the lavish ceremonies and public appearances, she was still a young woman trying to understand her place in a foreign land. Her relationship with Louis Auguste, who would later become King Louis VI, was one of quiet companionship rather than grand passion. Both were young and inexperienced, their marriage more a political union than a love match. Louis, shy and awkward, struggled with his own role, and this dynamic influenced Marie Antoinette's early years at court. Her attempts to win favour were often met with criticism, as the public and the courtiers alike viewed her with suspicion. To many, she was the foreign princess whose every action was scrutinized through the lens of political tension between France and Austria. The French people, burdened by their own struggles, were quick to criticize the young Dauphine, blaming her for perceived excesses and disconnect, even as she was still learning the ropes of her new life. Despite the challenges she faced, Marie Antoinette quickly became a trendsetter at the French court, her influence extending far beyond her immediate circle. Her sense of style was unparalleled, and soon the women of Versailles and Paris began emulating her elaborate gowns, towering hairstyles, and even her choice of colours. She was the embodiment of elegance and excess, a symbol of the court's detachment from the common people. However, her influence was not confined to fashion alone. As she grew more comfortable in her role, Marie Antoinette began to assert herself in the political sphere, a move that would only further complicate her public image. Although she was often seen as frivolous, she took a keen interest in the workings of the court and the kingdom, aligning herself with key figures and sometimes even interfering in state matters. This involvement, whether perceived as meddling or genuine concern, placed her at the centre of many court intrigues, with alliances and enmities forming around her. Her relationships with influential courtiers, ministers, and even foreign ambassadors would shape the narrative of her life at Versailles, painting her as a powerful yet polarizing figure. Amidst the pressures of court life, Marie Antoinette found solace in the Petit Trianon, a small chateau nestled within the grounds of Versailles. This private retreat was her sanctuary, a place where she could escape the relentless scrutiny and rigid formalities of the court. Here, she could indulge in her love for simpler pleasures, surrounded by a select group of trusted friends. At the Petit Trianon, she was not the queen-to-be, but simply Marie Antoinette, a woman seeking peace in a world of chaos. Yet, this refuge, meant to be a retreat from her public life, became another source of controversy. The very seclusion that brought her comfort also fueled the perception that she was disconnected from the realities of the people she would one day reign over. To the public, her private haven was a symbol of her indifference to the suffering outside the palace gates, contributing to the growing sentiment that the monarchy was out of touch with the common man. This image, once rooted in misunderstanding and jealousy, would later play a significant role in the narrative that led to her downfall. The grand coronation of Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette was not just a mere royal ceremony, but a moment of opulent splendor that embodied the height of monarchical power and the deep-rooted traditions of France. It was an event that captured the essence of an era, showcasing the magnificence of the French monarchy in all its glory. Held in the ancient and revered Cathedral of Reims, a site historically significant for the coronation of French kings, the ceremony was steeped in centuries-old rituals that underscored the divine right of monarchy, a belief that the king ruled not just by the will of the people, but by the will of God himself. As the young queen, Marie Antoinette, stood beside her husband, adorned in the most exquisite regalia that the artisans of France could craft, the gravity of her new role began to weigh heavily upon her shoulders. The coronation robes, heavy with gold and jewels, symbolized not just her new status, but also the immense responsibilities that came with it. The eyes of the nation were upon her, and she could feel the intense scrutiny of the court, the nobility and the common people alike. The people of France, captivated by the young and beautiful queen, held her in high regard. charm, grace, and elegance would breathe new life into the monarchy. There was an air of expectation that her presence would bring about a renewal, ushering in a period of prosperity and stability for a nation that was already beginning to stir with the winds of change. However, beneath the surface of the grand celebrations, there was an undercurrent of unease. While the cheers and adulation of the crowd echoed through the cathedral, there were also whispers of doubt and skepticism. The immense expectations placed upon Marie Antoinette were daunting, and the pressures of her position were unlike anything she had previously experienced. The French people, while enchanted by her beauty and charm, were also beginning to question the relevance and effectiveness of the monarchy in a rapidly changing world. The reality of her reign, as history would later reveal, would be far more complex and challenging than the gilded promises and hopeful aspirations of her coronation day. The ceremony, though a moment of triumph, also marked the beginning of a turbulent journey for Marie Antoinette, one that would ultimately test her resolve, character, and the very foundations of the French monarchy. Marie Antoinette's reign as queen was marred by scandal and controversy, with none being more damaging than the infamous affair of the diamond necklace. This scandal was a convoluted scheme involving deception, forged letters, and a stolen necklace of extraordinary value, an elaborate plot that ensnared some of the most powerful figures in French society. Despite Marie Antoinette's complete innocence and lack of involvement in orchestrating the scheme, her name was ruthlessly dragged into the scandal, casting a long shadow over her reputation. The public, already primed to view her with suspicion due to her perceived extravagance, quickly turned against her. The narrative that painted her as frivolous and extravagant took hold, and the scandal only deepened the already growing perception of her as Madame Deficit, a derogatory nickname that reflected the blame placed upon her for the nation's financial woes. Pamphleteers and satirists of the time seized upon the scandal with gusto, producing cruel caricatures and lampoons that exaggerated her supposed excesses and insensitivity to the plight of the common people. These relentless attacks on her character were not just idle gossip. They were part of a broader campaign to discredit the monarchy by targeting one of its most visible and vulnerable figures. The Queen, once admired for her beauty and grace, was now depicted as the epitome of an out-of-touch aristocrat, living in luxury while her subjects suffered. This transformation of her public image, from a naive foreign princess to a symbol of all that was wrong with the monarchy, was devastating. The unyielding tide of public opinion, fueled by scandal and rumour, irreparably tarnished her reputation, leaving Marie Antoinette increasingly isolated and vilified in the eyes of the people she once hoped to charm. Behind the gilded doors of Versailles, away from the prying eyes of the court and the public, Marie Antoinette found solace in her role as a mother, a role that allowed her to experience a rare and genuine sense of fulfillment. Her relationship with her children was one of the few aspects of her life where she could express unfiltered affection and care, free from the rigid formalities and endless scrutiny that defined court life. In the private moments she shared with her children, she could set aside the weighty responsibilities of her position and focus focus on providing them with the warmth and love that she had often yearned for in her own childhood. Marie Antoinette was deeply involved in their upbringing, ensuring they were nurtured not only with the best education, but also with the emotional support that she felt was so crucial. Her personal experiences of loneliness and isolation as a young archduchess in the Austrian court drove her to create a more loving and secure environment for her children, one where they could flourish away from the harsh judgment of the outside world. Her marriage to Louis XVI, though initially marked by formality and distance, gradually evolved into a more intimate and supportive relationship. As they navigated the complexities of their roles as monarchs, the couple grew closer, finding a mutual understanding and quiet companionship that helped them endure the immense pressures of their reign. The shared challenges they faced, whether in dealing with the political upheavals or the relentless public scrutiny, fostered a bond between them that was rooted in their shared experiences. Despite the many political and personal challenges that strained their relationship, there emerged a partnership that endured, characterized by a deep, if understated, respect and affection for one another. This companionship became a source of strength for both, helping them weather the mounting difficulties of their reign and providing a rare sense of stability in a life otherwise filled with uncertainty and turmoil. Amidst the scandals and relentless criticism that surrounded her, Marie Antoinette undeniably left a lasting mark on French culture, particularly in the realms of fashion and the arts. Despite the many challenges and controversies that plagued her reign, she emerged as a significant patron of the arts, playing a crucial role in supporting theatre, music, and the decorative arts, all of which flourished under her influence. Her refined taste and passion for aesthetics led her to champion artists, musicians, and designers, helping to cultivate a vibrant cultural scene at Versailles and beyond. Marie Antoinette's sense of style was revolutionary, and she became a fashion icon whose influence extended far beyond the borders of France. Her bold and imaginative fashion choices set trends across Europe, from the elaborate puff hairstyles that became synonymous with her image to the simpler, more pastoral attire she adopted later in life. This shift in style, from the opulent to the rustic, reflected a desire to return to a more natural and idyllic way of life, which she expressed through her famous retreat at the Petit Trianon. Her fashion choices were not merely about appearance. They were statements that resonated throughout the courts of Europe, influencing clothing, hair, and even attitudes toward beauty and femininity. Despite the controversies that dogged her, particularly accusations of extravagance and detachment from the plight of the common people, Marie Antoinette's legacy in fashion and the arts remains undeniable. Her influence on French culture has endured, continuing to inspire designers, artists, and historians long after her tragic end. In the annals of history, she remains a complex and multifaceted figure, both a product of her time, embodying the grandeur and excess of the late French monarchy, and a woman whose personal contributions have left an indelible mark on the cultural landscape of France. As the 1780s drew to a close, France found itself teetering on the edge of chaos, with the very fabric of the nation beginning to unravel. The kingdom's financial crisis, exacerbated by years of costly wars, most notably the American Revolutionary War and the extravagant spending of the royal court, had brought the nation to its knees. The coffers were nearly empty, and the attempts to reform the tax system to alleviate the burden on the common people were met with fierce resistance from the privileged classes. The common people, already struggling under the weight of heavy taxes and the soaring prices of bread, which was their primary sustenance, were growing increasingly desperate. Their anger, once simmering quietly beneath the surface, began to boil over into open public unrest as they found themselves bearing the brunt of the nation's financial woes. The streets of Paris became a powder keg of discontent, where every grievance and hardship was magnified by the palpable tension in the air. The cries for change grew louder with each passing day, as the people demanded relief from their suffering and a voice in the governance of the country. The tipping point came on July 14th, 1789, when a furious mob stormed the Bastille, a medieval fortress that had come to symbolize the arbitrary power and tyranny of the monarchy. The fall of this seemingly impenetrable fortress marked the dramatic beginning of the French Revolution, a period of unprecedented upheaval that would forever alter the course of French history. As the revolution gained momentum, the once unassailable monarchy found itself under siege, its centuries-old authority crumbling in the face of the people's demands for liberty, equality, and fraternity. The social and political order that had sustained the monarchy for generations began to unravel, as a revolutionary fervour spread from Paris to the provinces, igniting a firestorm of change that would consume the entire nation. The monarchy, which had once stood as the bedrock of French society, was now viewed as an obstacle to the people's aspirations, and its power began to erode rapidly under the relentless pressure of the revolutionary forces. The French Revolution, fueled by the anger and desperation of the common people, would soon transform France from a kingdom of rigid hierarchies and privilege into a republic founded on the principles of democratic governance and the rights of man. In a desperate bid to escape the mounting dangers of revolution, King Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette, increasingly aware of their precarious situation, devised a plan to flee Paris and seek refuge with royalist supporters in the eastern regions of France, where they hoped to rally forces and regain control. Disguised as commoners, Louis posing as a valet and Marie Antoinette as a governess, they were accompanied by a small retinue that included their children and a few loyal servants. Under the cover of darkness on the night of June 20th, 1791, they slipped out of the Tuileries Palace, embarking on what they believed would be their salvation. However, from the very beginning, their flight was plagued by misfortune. The large, cumbersome carriage they chose, intended to carry the entire family and their essential belongings, proved to be too slow and conspicuous for a secret escape. Delays and mishaps along the way further hindered their progress, eroding any chance of making a swift and unnoticed journey to safety. Despite their best efforts to blend in, the royal family's appearance and mannerisms were difficult to disguise. The final blow came in the small town of Varennes, just miles from their intended destination, where they were recognized by a postmaster who had seen the king's likeness on currency. The alarm was quickly raised, and local officials intervened, bringing their escape attempt to a humiliating and abrupt end. The failed escape sent shockwaves through the nation, fundamentally altering the course of the revolution. The King and Queen's betrayal of the people's trust was now undeniable, shattering any lingering illusions that they were willing to compromise with the revolutionaries or accept the new political realities. Public opinion, which had already been souring due to the perceived aloofness and excesses of the royal family, turned sharply against them. The image of the monarchy was irreparably damaged, and the once glimmering hope of reconciliation between the monarchy and the revolutionaries was extinguished. In its place, a growing resolve emerged among the people and the revolutionary leaders to bring an end to the monarchy altogether. The Varennes incident marked a crucial turning point, accelerating the radicalization of the revolution and setting the stage for the eventual abolition of the monarchy and the tragic fate that would befall Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette. The capture at Varennes marked the beginning of the end for the French monarchy. The royal family was forcibly returned to Paris, where they were met with jeers and hostile crowds. Stripped of their remaining authority, they were placed under close watch, prisoners in all but name. The situation grew increasingly dire as the revolution took a more radical turn. By the summer of 1792, the tide of revolution had surged beyond control, and the once mighty monarchy was collapsing under its weight. On August the 10th, 1792, the Tuileries Palace was stormed by an armed mob, and the royal family was formally imprisoned in the Temple, a medieval fortress in the heart of Paris. Here, in their grim and isolated quarters, the reality of their downfall became painfully clear. The National Assembly, now dominated by fervent revolutionaries, moved swiftly to abolish the monarchy altogether. On September 21st, 1792, France was declared a republic, and with that, centuries of royal rule were brought to an abrupt end. For Marie Antoinette and her family, the fall of the monarchy was not just the loss of a throne, but the beginning of their tragic final chapter as they awaited the inevitable reckoning with the revolutionary forces that now controlled their fate. By the autumn of 1793, Marie Antoinette, once the dazzling Queen of France, found herself standing before the revolutionary tribunal, a shadow of her former self. The charges brought against her were numerous and grave, ranging from high treason to depletion of the national treasury, but the most shocking were the accusations of immoral conduct, including an obscene claim that she had engaged in inappropriate relations with her own son, an allegation so vile that it even stirred some sympathy among her harshest critics. The trial, however, was never about justice. It was a foregone conclusion. The proceedings were swift and ruthless, with the outcome predetermined by the revolutionaries who sought to make an example of the fallen queen. Throughout the trial, Marie Antoinette maintained her dignity, refuting the accusations with calm composure, though she knew well that her fate was sealed long before she entered the courtroom. As the verdict of guilty was pronounced, Marie Antoinette faced the grim reality of her imminent death with a quiet resignation. Her final days were spent in the confines of the conciergerie, a dank and cold prison that bore little resemblance to the grandeur of Versailles she once called home. stripped of her regal attire, her hair cut short in preparation for the guillotine. She was a stark contrast to the vibrant queen who had once captivated the court and the people of France. On the morning of October the 16th, 1793, Marie Antoinette was led through the streets of Paris in an open cart, exposed to the jeers and taunts of a crowd that had once adored her. Her final moments were marked by a stoic bravery. As she ascended the scaffold, she accidentally stepped on the executioner's foot and famously apologized, her last words reflecting the decorum that had been ingrained in her since birth. The fall of the blade was swift, and with it, the life of one of history's most enigmatic figures came to an end. The public reaction was mixed. Some saw her death as a necessary step in the revolution, while others mourned the loss of the once glamorous queen, who had become a tragic symbol of a bygone era. In the years following her execution, Marie Antoinette's legacy has been the subject of intense debate among historians. Once vilified as Madame d'Efficy and blamed for the financial ruin of France, she has since been re-evaluated with a more nuanced understanding of her life and circumstances. Some view her as a victim of a system that was doomed to collapse, a queen who was out of her depth in a rapidly changing world. Others see her as a scapegoat for the failings of a monarchy that had long lost touch with its people. Today, Marie Antoinette stands as a complex figure in the tapestry of the French Revolution, a symbol of the excesses of the Ancien Regime, but also a tragic figure caught in the violent upheaval of history. Her story continues to fascinate, a reminder of the fine line between power and downfall, and how history often reshapes the legacies of those who lived through its most tumultuous times. Marie Antoinette's journey from a young Austrian archduchess to the Queen of France is a story that I have found deeply fascinating, woven with intricate threads of power, intrigue, and ultimately tragedy. Her life, filled with opulence and excess, contrasts sharply with the turbulent events that surrounded her, leading to the French Revolution, from her arrival at Versailles and her role as Dauphine, to the scandals that plagued her reign, and finally her dramatic fall from grace. Marie Antoinette's story is one of the most compelling chapters in the history of European royalty. Her contributions to fashion and the arts are undeniable, even as her legacy remains shadowed by the controversies that surrounded her. As we've explored together today, her life is a vivid example of how history often remembers individuals through the dual lenses of admiration and disdain, depending on the times and the tellers of the story. Marie Antoinette's impact has endured long after her tragic end, resonating in both popular culture and historical discourse. I've seen how she has been depicted as a symbol of the monarchy's decadence and disconnect, but also as a misunderstood figure, a victim of circumstances beyond her control. Through literature, film, and even fashion, her image has been reinterpreted and reimagined countless times, reflecting our ongoing fascination with her life. In the pages of history, she remains a figure of endless debate, a queen whose legacy is as complex as the era she lived through, continuing to inspire both sympathy and criticism. Her story serves as a poignant reminder of the fragility of power and the unpredictable tides of public opinion. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the the life and times of Marie Antoinette here on the ASMR History Channel. I hope you found this exploration as fascinating as I did. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and leave a comment below with your thoughts or suggestions for future topics. I look forward to bringing you more stories from history